Hey guys, so here we are with chapter 54 of the Count of Monte Cristo, the trial. The paragraph which appeared in the papers regarding the part Monte had played in the surrender of Janina caused great excitement in the Chamber of Peers among the usually calm groups of that high assembly. That day, almost every member had arrived before the usual hour to discuss with his compeers the sinister event that was to fix public attention on one of the best-known names in that illustrious body. Some were reading the article in a subdued voice, others making comments or exchanging reminiscences which substantiated the charges still more. The Count of Monte was not popular with his colleagues. In order to maintain his position, he had, like all upstarts, adopted a very haughty manner. The aristocrat smiled at him, the man of talent disclaimed him, and the justly proud instinctively despised him. The Count of Monte alone was ignorant of the news. He did not receive the newspaper containing the defamatory information, and had spent the morning writing letters and trying a new horse. He arrived at the chamber at his usual hour, and with proud step and haughty mien alighted from his carriage and passed along the corridors into the hall without remarking the hesitation of the doorkeepers or the coldness of his colleagues. The sitting had been in progress about half an hour when he entered. Everyone had the accusing paper before him, and it was evident that all were aching to start the debate. But, as is generally the case, no one wished to take upon himself the responsibility of opening the attack. At length, one of the peers, an open enemy of Monte's, ascended the tribune with such solemnity that all felt that desired moment had arrived. There was an awe-inspiring silence. Monte alone was ignorant of the cause of the deep attention given to an orator they were accustomed to hear with indifference. The Count paid little heed to the preamble in which the speaker announced that he was about to touch upon a subject so grave, so sacred, and at the same time of such vital importance to the Senate that he demanded the undivided attention of all his colleagues. When Janina and Colonel Fanon were mentioned, the Count of Monte turned so horribly pale that a shudder went through the whole assembly and all eyes were turned toward him. The article was read during this painful silence, and then the speaker declared his reluctance to open the subject and the difficulty of his task, but it was the honor of M. de Monte and of the whole chamber he proposed to defend by introducing a debate on these personal and ever-pressing questions. He concluded by demanding a speedy inquiry into the matter before the calumny had time to spread, so that M. de Monte might be reinstated to the position in public opinion he had so long held. Monte was so completely overwhelmed by this enormous and unexpected attack that it was almost more than he could do to stammer a few words in reply, staring the while at his colleagues with wide-open eyes. This nervousness, which might have been due to the astonishment of innocence as much as to the shame of guilt, evoked some sympathy in his favor. An inquiry was voted for, and the Count was asked what time he required to prepare his defense. On realizing that this terrible blow had still left him alive, Monte's courage returned to him. "My brother peers," he replied, "it is not with time that one repulses an attack of this kind that has been made on me by some unknown enemies. I must answer this flash of lightning, which for a moment overpowered me, by a thunderbolt. Instead of defending myself in this way, would that I could shed my blood to prove to my colleagues that I am worthy to be their equal." These words made a favorable impression. "I therefore request that the inquiry be instituted as soon as possible," he continued, "and I undertake to furnish the chamber with all the necessary evidence." "Is the chamber of opinion that the inquiry should take place this very day?" asked the president. "Yes," was the unanimous reply. A committee of 12 members was appointed to examine the evidence supplied by Monte, and the first session was fixed for 8 o'clock that evening in the committee room. This decision arrived at, Monte asked permission to retire. He had to collect the evidence he had long since prepared against such a storm, which his cunning and indomitable character had foreseen. The evening arrived. All Paris was agog with expectation. Many believed that Monte had only to show himself to overthrow the charge. On the other hand, some asserted he would not make an appearance. There were few who had said they had seen him leave for Brussels, and one or two even went to the police station to inquire whether it was true that he had taken out a passport. Everyone arrived punctually at 8 o'clock. Monsieur de Moncouf entered the hall at the last stroke of the clock. In hand he carried some papers. He was carefully but simply dressed, and according to the ancient military custom, wore his coat buttoned up to the chin. Outwardly he was calm, and contrary to habit, walked with an unaffected gait. His presence produced a most favorable effect, and the committee was far from being ill-disposed toward him. Several of the members went forward to shake hands with him. One of the doorkeepers handed a letter to the president. "You are now at liberty to speak," said the president, unsealing his letter. The count commenced his defense in a most eloquent and skillful manner. He produced evidence to show that the vizier of Janina had honored him with entire confidence up to his last hour, the best proof being that he had entrusted him with a mission to the Sultan himself, the result of which meant life or death to him. He showed the ring with which the Ali Pasha generally sealed his letters, and which he had given him as a token of authority, so that upon his return he might gain access to him at any hour of the day or night. He said his mission had unfortunately failed, and when he returned to defend his benefactor, he found him dead. So great was Ali Pasha's confidence in him, however, that before he died he had entrusted his favorite wife and his daughter to his care. In the meantime, the president carelessly glanced at the letter that had been given him, but the very first lines aroused his attention. He read the missive again and again. Then, fixing his eyes on Moncouf, said, "You say, Count, that the vizier of Janina confided his wife and daughter to your care." "Yes, Monsieur le Président," replied Moncouf, "but in that, as in all else, misfortune dogged my steps. Upon my return, Vasiliki and her daughter Haydée had disappeared." "Do you know them?" "Thanks to my intimacy with the Pasha and this great confidence in me, I saw them more than 20 times. "Have you any idea what has become of them?" "I have been told that they succumbed to their grief, and maybe to their privation. I was not rich, my life was in constant danger, and much to my regret I could not go in search of them." The president frowned almost imperceptibly as he said, "Messieurs, you have heard Monsieur de Moncouf's defense. Now, Count, can you produce any witness to support the truth of what you say?" "Alas, I cannot," replied the Count. "All those who were at the Pasha's court and who knew me there are either scattered or dead. I believe I am the only one of my compatriots who survived that terrible war. I have only Ali Tebelin's letters, which I have laid before you, and the ring, the token of his goodwill. The most convincing evidence I can put forward is the complete absence of testimony against my honor and the clean record of my military career." A murmur of approbation went through the assembly, and at this moment Monsieur Moncouf's cause was gained. It only needed to be put to the vote when the president rose and said, "Messieurs, you and the Count will, I presume, not be adverse to hearing a witness who claims to hold important evidence and has come forward of his own accord. He has doubtless come to prove the perfect innocence of our colleague. Here is the letter I have just received on the matter." The president read as follows: "Monsieur le Président, I can furnish the committee of inquiry appointed to examine the conduct in Epirus and Macedonia of a certain Lieutenant General, the Count of Moncouf, with important facts." The president made a short pause. The Count of Moncouf turned deathly pale, and the tightly clenched papers that he held in his hand audibly crackled. The president resumed: "I was present at Ali Pasha's death and know what became of Vasiliki and Haydée. I hold myself at the disposal of the committee and even claim the honor of being heard. I shall be waiting in the corridor when this note is handed to you." "Who is this witness, or rather enemy?" said the Count in a very changed voice. "We shall learn in a moment, monsieur. Is the committee agreed to hear this witness?" "Yes, yes," was the unanimous reply. The president called the doorkeeper and inquired of him whether anyone was waiting in the corridors. "A woman accompanied by her attendant," said the doorkeeper. The members looked at each other in amazement. "Let this woman enter," said the president. All eyes were turned toward the door, and 5 minutes later the doorkeeper reappeared. Behind him came a woman enveloped in a large veil which completely covered her, but the form outlined, and the perfume which exhaled from her denoted that she was a young and elegant woman. The president requested her to lay aside her veil, and it was seen that she was dressed in Grecian attire and was a remarkably beautiful woman. Monsieur de Moncouf looked at her in amazement mingled with terror, for this woman held his life in her hands. To the rest of the assembly, however, it was a turn of events so strange and interesting that Montcalf's welfare became but a secondary consideration. The president offered the young woman a seat, but she made a sign that she would rather stand. The count, on the other hand, had sunk into his chair, for his legs refused to support him. "Madame," began the president, "you state in your letter to the committee that you have important information on the Janina affair, and that you were an eyewitness of the events. Permit me to remark that you must have been very young then. I was 4 years old, but as the events so particularly concerned me, not a detail has escaped my memory. How did these events concern you? Who are you that this tragedy should have made so deep an impression of you?" "My name is Haydée," replied the young woman. "I am the daughter of Ali Tebelin, Pasha of Janina, and Vasiliki, his much-beloved wife." The modest and at the same time proud blush that suffused the young woman's cheeks, the fire in her eye, and the majestic way in which she revealed her identity made an indescribable impression on the assembly. The count, on the other hand, could not have been more abashed if a thunderbolt had fallen and opened a chasm at his feet. "Madame," resumed the president, making a respectful bow, permit me a simple question. Can you prove the authenticity of what you say?" "I can, monsieur," said Haydée, taking a perfumed satin bag from under her veil. "Here is my birth certificate, drawn up by my father and signed by his principal officers. Also my certificate of baptism, my father having allowed me to be brought up in my mother's religion. This letter bears the seal of the Grand Primate of Macedonia and Epirus. Lastly, and this is perhaps the most important, I have the document pertaining to the sale of my person and that of my mother to an Armenian merchant named El Kobir, effected by the French officer who, in his infamous treaty with the Porte, had reserved for his share of the booty the wife and daughter of his benefactor. These he sold for the sum of 400,000 francs. A ghastly pallor spread over the count's cheeks, and his eyes became bloodshot when he heard these terrible imputations, which were received by the assembly in grim silence. Haydée, still calm, but more dangerous in her very calmness than another would have been in anger, handed to the president the record of her sale drawn up in the Arab tongue. And it was thought likely that a testimony might be forthcoming in the Arabic, Romaic, or Turkish language. The interpreter of the chamber had been advised his presence might be needed, and he was now summoned. One of the peers, to whom the Arabic tongue was familiar, followed closely the original text as the translator read. "I, El Kobir, slave merchant and purveyor to the harem of His Highness, acknowledge having received for transmission to the Sublime Sultan from the Count of Monte Cristo an emerald valued at 800,000 francs as purchase money for a young Christian slave, aged 11 years, of the name of Haydée, a recognized daughter of the late Ali Tebelin, Pasha of Janina, and of Vasiliki, his favorite, she having been sold to me 7 years ago, together with her mother, who died on her arrival at Constantinople, by a French colonel in the service of the Vizier Ali Tebelin, of the name of Fernand Mondego. The aforesaid purchase was made on behalf of His Highness, whose mandate I had for the sum of 400,000 francs, given at Constantinople with the authorization of His Highness in the year 1247 of the Hijra. Signed, El Kobir. In order to give this document due credence and authority, it will be vested with the imperial seal, which the vendor consents to have affixed." Beside the merchant's signature was the seal of the Sublime Sultan. A dreadful silence followed. The count was speechless. His eyes instinctively sought Haydée, and he fixed her with a frenzied stare. "Is it permitted, madame, to interrogate the Count of Monte Cristo, who I believe is staying in Paris just now?" asked the president. "The Count of Monte Cristo, my second father, has been in Normandy for the past 3 days, monsieur." "Then who advised you to take this step, for which this committee is indebted to you, and which was the natural proceeding in view of your birth and misfortunes?" "This step was urged upon me by my grief and respect. May God forgive me, though I am a Christian. May one thought has always been to avenge my illustrious father's death. Therefore, as soon as I set foot in France and learned that the traitor lived in Paris, I have ever watched for this opportunity. I have lived a retired life in my noble protector's house. I wish it so because I like retirement and silence, so that I may live in the thoughts and memories of the past. The Count of Monte Cristo surrounds me with every paternal care, and in the silence of my apartments I receive each day all newspapers and periodicals. From them I glean all information concerning what is going on in the world. From them I learned what transpired in the chamber this morning and what was to take place this evening. Then the Count of Monte Cristo knows nothing of this action on your part, asked the president. He is in absolute ignorance of it, monsieur, and my only fear is that he may disapprove of what I have done. Nevertheless, this is a glorious day for me, continued the young woman, raising her eager eyes heavenward. The day when I at last have the opportunity of avenging my father. During all this time, the Count had not uttered a single word. His colleagues looked at him, no doubt commiserating with him on this calamity which had been wrought on him by a woman. The ever-increasing lines and wrinkles on his face betrayed his misery. Monsieur de Moncouf, do you recognize this lady as the daughter of Ali Tabelin, Pasha of Janina? No, said Moncouf, making an effort to rise. This is nothing but a plot woven against me by my enemies. Haydée was looking at the door as though she expected someone, and at these words she turned round sharply, and seeing the Count standing there, uttered a fearful cry. You do not recognize me, she cried. Fortunately, I recognize you. You are Fernand Mondego, the French officer who instructed my father's troops. It was you who surrendered the castle of Janina. It was you, having been sent to Constantinople by my father to treat directly with the Sultan for the life or death of your benefactor, brought back a falsified firman granting full pardon. It was you who obtained with this same firman the Pasha's ring which would secure for you the obedience of Selim, the guard of the fire. It was you who stabbed Selim. It was you who sold my mother and myself to El Kober. Murderer! Murderer! Your master's blood is still on your brow. Look at him. All of you. These words were spoken with such vehemence and with such force of truth that everyone looked at the Count's forehead, and he himself put his hand up as though he felt Ali's blood still warm upon his forehead. You positively recognize Monsieur de Moncrief as the same officer, Fernand Mondego. Do I recognize him? Cried Haydée. Oh, mother, you said to me, you are free. You had a father whom you loved. You were destined to be almost a queen. Look well at this man who has made you a slave. It is he who has placed your father's head on the pike. It is he who has sold us. It is he who has betrayed us. Look at his right hand with its large scar. If you forget his face, you will recognize his hand into which Elie Colbert's gold fell piece by piece. Oh yes, I know him. Let him tell you himself whether he does not recognize me now. Each word cut Moncouf like a knife. He broke down his determination. At the last words, he instinctively hid his hand in his bosom, for as a matter of fact, it bore a mark of a wound, and once more he sank back into his chair. The scene had set the opinions of the assembly in a veritable turmoil, like leaves torn from their branches by the violence of a north wind. Do not lose courage, Count, said the president. The justice of this court, like that of God, is supreme and equal to all. It will not permit you to be crushed by your enemies without giving you the means of defending yourself. Do you wish to have further investigation made? Do you wish me to send 2 members of the chamber to Janina? Speak. Moncouf made no reply. All the members of the committee looked at one another in horror. They knew the Count's energetic and violent temper, and realized it must have needed a terrible blow to break down this man's defense. They could but think that this sleep-like silence would be followed by an awakening resembling thunder in its force. What have you decided? The president asked. Nothing, said the Count in a toneless voice. Then Ali Tabelin's daughter has spoken the truth. She is indeed the dreaded witness in face of whose evidence the guilty one dares not answer not guilty. You have actually committed the crimes of which she accuses of you. The Count cast around him for a look of despair such as would have elicited mercy from a tiger, but it could not disarm his judges. Then he raised his eyes toward the roof, but instantly turned them away again, as though fearful lest it should open and he should find himself before that other tribunal they call heaven, and face to face with that other judge whom they call God. He tore at the buttons that fastened the coat which was choking him, and walked out of the room like one demented. For an instant his weary steps echoed dolefully, but the sound was soon followed by the rattling of his carriage wheels as he was borne away at a gallop. Messieurs, said the president when silence was restored, is the Count of Moncouf guilty of felony, treason, and dishonor? Yes, was the unanimous reply of all the members. Haydée was present to the end of the meeting. She heard the verdict passed on the Count, but neither pity nor joy was depicted on her features. Covering her face with her veil, she bowed to the councillors and left the room with queenly tread. Ooh. He didn't see that coming, did he? We'll pick this up next time. Bye.